What is going on? Welcome in to Philly Take with RB. Today, joining me, I got a special guest, right? When we want the news, the rumors, the inside scoop, we go to the best in the business. And my guy covers the LA Clippers, dime dropper. Go follow him on all socials, man. YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. He's one of the best out there doing it in Clipperland. Thanks for joining the show, man.
Oh, thanks for having me, RB. I was trying to get you on to preview the Sixers-Knicks series on my channel, but it obviously didn't work out. We didn't have the timing aligned, but I always have a lot of respect for you because I love local content creators, man. Like, that's what I gravitate towards. That's what my channel is. So yeah, I love supporting people that make that kind of content.
Absolutely, man. Likewise. And there's never been a better time, I think, for us to collab than right now because we have the Paul George situation, Clippers, Sixers. And I just feel like both of our teams are kind of in the same area, I would say. We've both had the big names. We've had the talent, the superstars. We just cannot get over the hump for whatever reason it is. And here we are. And, you know, both our teams really face a big decision. I think it could really weigh what happens in free agency. But before we get into all that, let me just take a step back. What is the vibe right now in Clippers land? Because I feel like when you go into a free agency or you have a player, you look at it through your own lens, like in terms of what happened recently. Like if you look at a guy like Tobias Harris right now, Sixer fans will tell you he's the worst player of all time. You go to a low market team like the Charlotte Hornets, for example, they'll say, oh, well, he averages 16 points per game. He's okay. So I guess just from the Clipper perspective, what is the vibe around Paul George right now? What do they think? Do they want him back? What do you think's going to happen?
Very mixed opinions. It feels like it's definitely the talk of Clipperland, the uncertainty with Paul George. And the thing about the Clippers now is there is a difference between the Sixers and the Clippers. The main thing is that Embiid, being your franchise player, he is younger than Kawhi, younger than our players, and he's in the middle of his prime. Like, he's obviously had very unfortunate circumstances when it comes to being injured every postseason. Still plays through it, but he's just never quite in the shape that he's in when he's putting up MVP stats on a nightly basis in the regular season. But for the Clippers, with Kawhi, we've not had a healthy playoff run with this guy since the bubble, and he wasn't, drafted by us. He didn't have the process coming from the rebuild into, something where what Joel Embiid has really built that, cult-like worship in Philadelphia from what it looks like on the outside. We don't have a player like that, and Paul George is one of those guys that he has given the Clippers a lot of great memories, got us to our first Western Conference Finals, but right now the conversation is like, there's people that want to blow it up, and then there's people that want to run it back and just say we got to re-sign them and just get better complementary pieces, get a little younger around the margins and stuff like that, which, again, it's going to be hard to get good quality players if we re-sign PG and Harden. Because the fact of the matter is, if you're committed to Kawhi Leonard and getting a good team around him, you should not lose Paul George. And people are so pissed off at Paul George that there's a lot of Clipper fans that are like, can't wait to see him go. He just makes excuses. He doesn't perform when you need him. He just leaves a lot on the table, and they're like addition by subtraction. But I think those people are being slightly naive. You're not replacing he's still an all-star level player. Was an all-star this year, and while that was a little controversial, at worst, he's just missing the cut. You know what I'm saying? This guy is a consistent 23, 5, and 3 on really solid shooting splits every single year. But he definitely leaves a lot on the table, and I know we'll talk more about that, but it's pretty split in Clipperland. I think it really comes down to, I think the one group that's way off is the people that want to run it back and think we can just lose Paul George and be okay. I think unless we get a trade, because I know if we're talking Philly, we're going to be talking about if you guys maxed him out. So that would be us losing him for nothing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we lose him for nothing, complete disaster, and we're not going to be able to replace him because we're going to definitely re-sign James Harden, I would think, just to make the team competitive going into the new stadium that we're bringing in. So it's very mixed. It really comes down to if your team blow it up or if your team bring it back. If your team run it back though and don't want Paul George, I'm just very confused at those people.
Yeah, no, I think that's, you made some really good points. I thought the Clippers were going to end up blowing it up. They go through another playoff run. Kawhi's not healthy. How are you going to get there, right? And by the way, shout out to Dime Dropper because he's one of the only people in Clipperland when the James Harden trade happened, he said, I don't want this to happen. I don't like it. So this guy knows what he's talking about. And you talk about Kawhi, James Harden, PG. Problem is if a sign and trade, for example, is an option, Sixers don't really have anything to trade unless it's Tobias Harris, which was actually kind of like a false BS rumor report today. And I know Clipperland probably does not want Tobias Harris back. Maybe I'm wrong. You can correct me. But overall, it's like, I feel like Paul George can bring some good to the table, but there's so much risk for both of our franchises right now. It's like, do you want to make that investment? But is there another alternative out there? What's the opportunity cost? Is that the right way of thinking when it comes to Clipperland?
Yeah, the thing is, Kawhi re-signed in the middle of the season, which I was adamantly against. That he re-signed him before he even proved that he could stay healthy for the playoffs. That was insane to me. But we re-sign him, and he doesn't take the max. He takes 3 years, about $50 million each year. So his contract expires at the end of the 2027 season, and Paul George clearly wants more than 3 years. And the Clippers don't want Paul George to be paid for more years than Kawhi. And they also, I don't think, want him to be paid as much as Kawhi because he was getting the same amount of money as Kawhi these past 4 years. And he's not the same basketball player that Kawhi is. But if you're Paul George and you're walking into the room negotiating with Lawrence Frank and them, you're like, well, who's been on the court? Who got us to our first conference finals when Kawhi got hurt? And those are valid points because he has been more available in the playoffs than Kawhi, even though he has had his fair share of injuries as well. But yeah, it is all about what you're risking. The Clippers don't want to max Paul out because he's not a max player. But I think it's really interesting from your side, man. I can't lie because I think Paul being a third guy with Tyrese Maxey and Embiid is the perfect role at this stage of his career for him to want to compete for a championship. But did you hear his comments the other day about how much prioritizing a championship? He's like, I just want to play the right way. I don't know about, it's not all about a championship for me, I don't know what that even means. Is that a shot at Harden and Kawhi for being a little slower? I don't understand. It's just always something new with that guy.
Yeah, a couple things you said. So just to bounce off that point you just made, I thought that was interesting. I honestly feel like people kind of took it out of context. Like he said, I'm not chasing a chip. Like I'm not going to go to the best team in the league, but I want to play the right style that complements me. And I feel like people took that as him saying, I don't want to win it all. I just want my money, etc. Maybe he was talking about a team like Orlando or Golden State, whatever it may be. But it almost felt like throughout that episode that he was throwing shots at Kawhi, James Harden. Like, I do agree. Everything he was saying was like, well, we weren't clicking all the time, or our defense wasn't clicking together. The one other host was talking about effort, and we saw how the playoffs kind of went. The Clippers fizzled out again, with Harden kind of doing the same tendencies, etc. PG was saying the Mavs were throwing different looks, and, nobody could get to their spots on the floor. It felt like that whole episode, he was throwing shots at the Clippers. But at the same time, when you talk about complementing his game, I do agree with you. Like, Paul George with Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey as a third option, I think is beautiful on the basketball floor as a fit. But the question is, do the Sixers want to get in another situation where they pay him a 4-year max? The Clippers don't want to go the 4th year. Sixers pay him a 4-year max. And you're exactly right. He is not that guy from the 21 Western Conference Finals who elevated. I think he averaged like 28 points per game in that series and was amazing without Kawhi. He's not that guy, but can he be that third option? And do you want to pay him a max contract where you may not be able to improve in the margins with the new CBA, with the new restrictions? And what if he gets hurt in the first year? Then you're almost looking towards maybe like another Tobias Harris situation. What do you think?
Yeah, it's so tricky, man. Now that you mentioned, you did a good job articulating it with the new CBA. You definitely want a supporting cast, but if your big three is that great, then you just have to accept the fact. Like, for example, the Miami Heat teams of the early 2010s, they didn't have a crazy supporting cast. They started Mario Chalmers, who I don't want to take anything away from him. He was very good at the time for what he did, but he was, not in the top 20 starting point guards in the NBA. They had a bench of guys that didn't really create their own shot. It was still always dependent on LeBron and Wade and Bosh to get shots. The thing is, the availability thing. That's the main thing. Paul George is also an injury risk if he gets hurt and you're paying him that much money. And as you said, you can't fill out the roster with those solid complementary pieces. And you already have Joel Embiid, whose health is always a concern. So it's such a tricky thing, man. It really is. It's going to be fascinating. I hope Paul George. Well, I want this blown sky high, bro. I'm done with this. I'm talking about the team as I'm treating it more like work these days. But I'm a diehard Clipper fan, man. This breaks my heart to talk like this, but it's not fun just praying for Kawhi's health every single season.
Yeah.
At least Embiid, when he's injured, he's still such a good ambassador for the team. He's so lively. Like, he pumps up the crowd. He's pumping up the crowd at road games. Kawhi is we don't even know anything about the guy really, except for that he's a big rap fan. Some smoking at the concert. He's a more of a funny guy than people realize behind the scenes. But as a franchise player, his best attribute is he's an incredible basketball player, but he doesn't do the extras. But when he's not even playing basketball, it's like, it's hard, man. He's the face of your franchise. He's the biggest question mark of the whole thing. So I'm personally just like, I don't want to re-sign Harden. I don't want to re-sign Paul. The issue is the Clippers have nowhere to go. We gave all of our picks up for Paul George. We gave you guys an unprotected first rounder for 2028 for Harden. So it's very hard to tank with no picks when you're opening up a new building. So honestly, what I want at this point is we find some kind of compromise with Paul George. If we can't compromise, you just can't let him leave for free. Try the sign and trade route if it comes to that. But if the ball's in Paul's court to me, not the Clippers, he can do what he wants to do. If he wants to leave and get money and leave for nothing, for free, I mean, he has the right to do that if the Clippers aren't giving him what he wants. So we got to, I think, find some kind of compromise with him. And then my vote would be to wait for the Clippers to have an inevitably great stretch in the regular season where they all look like a contender and just trade them all.
Sell them all. No,
it's not going to happen, though, man. It's not going to happen. What I want is not happening. The Clippers are going to try to run it back. If that's the case, you just have to bite the bullet and pay him. Like, that's how I feel at this point. You just have to.
Yeah, and I'm starting to see what you're saying about business kind of triumphing the play because, you know, the new arena and stuff, that's not the time to go sell everybody and tank. So, you know, unfortunately, and I do feel for you and Clipper Nation, I respect the hell out of you because it takes a lot to come up here and say that. Like, it's time to blow it up, get rid of everybody. I'm sure Clipper Nation probably thinks you're a villain at this point, but it is the truth.
A lot of them do, man. It's like, it's very 50-50. Some think I'm a great voice for the fan base. The others cannot stand me. But it's like, at the end of the day, man, I was a season ticket holder this year, and I've been a fan for 19 years. And once we change direction, once we have a new core, I think everyone's going to like me because I'm going to be so positive no matter how bad we are because I push for this. You can't have it both ways. I just want something that feels real. Like, this is just feels like we're just adding a lot of stars and there's no process to it. And it's just, I don't know, man. It's not how I felt with Blake Griffin at all.
Yeah, it feels like you're kind of running it into the ground at this point. But in terms of, you know, the basketball fit, etc., I want to try something here. I want you to take your bias out of it, pretend you're not a Clippers fan. Either, you know, you're an NBA analyst in general, or maybe, you know, you're a Sixers fan, whatever. I'm going to give you the floor for like 60 seconds. And I want you to either make the case for whether the Sixers should or should not go for Paul George.
Man, I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it just because there's already uncertainty with Embiid at times and his health during the playoffs. Like, to me, that's the biggest thing. Like, I know this season he still played in the playoffs and averaged 30 points in that series, but the way he tends to sometimes seems to get fatigued in the end of games in the playoffs. I don't know if it's because he's injured or his conditioning or what it is, but I wouldn't just put all the help you can around him and around Embiid without the supporting cast. With someone so questionable like Paul George, I wouldn't do that, honestly, man. I would try to work it a little bit differently. And if you want me to be, you probably want me to give my take as a Clipper fan on his basketball, because we should not end this segment without talking about the basketball flaws, because until you watch him every night, you will not see it. Because Paul George is the type of guy that his highs look incredible and his averages end up being good when you don't see how inconsistent he is as a star. And if it wasn't the max conversation, if you can get him for less than the max, I just don't think that's going to happen, because if it's less than the max, he's coming back to us. But if you were hypothetically to get him for less than the max, then I would do it. But it's going to be a max if it goes to Philly, in my opinion, or $50 million at least per year.
Yeah. No, the whole offseason, what I've been saying to Sixer Nation is I'll take him on a 2-year max with a 3rd-year option. No problem at all. But he's not going to do that. His camp's not going to do that. He has one contract left in him. The problem with where Sixer fans are at is kind of what you're saying. You know, they want that supporting cast, but at the same time, they know Embiid's likely to go down. So at that point, your whole season's kind of canned. When Embiid goes down, the team's not going to flourish. That's how any team is with their big superstars. Could PG step in and be that guy? But I want to go back to the point you just made and then take into your consideration when it comes to a Clippers fan perspective, because there are a lot of players like that. And when Sixer fans look at PG, they're looking at, well, 20, 25 points a game, shooting 41% from three, give you 5 rebounds, 4 assists, knockdown shooter, et cetera, et cetera. But tell us about what it's like in the ins and outs, right? The night-to-night basis. What is it like having Paul George on your team?
It's a roller coaster, man. I thought Blake Griffin left a lot on the table at times, but it's nowhere near. Paul George is the most frustrating Clipper that we've ever had when it comes to performance, because he literally is one of the most talented players of this generation. Physical gifts and skill, he's one of the most talented players I've ever seen. Like, he makes you think he's some of the stuff that he does when he's on is like, wow, especially watching it live, like him at his size, how low he can get on his handle and all the spots he can shoot from, and how versatile he is in terms of like, he's a coach's dream in ways, because you can run him off so many screens. He doesn't need the ball so much, doesn't need to hold the ball too long. He can score from everywhere. But the problem is, all these things I mentioned, all the great things he does, it's almost like he doesn't know his bag. He has no go-to move. He has one night, he'll have 30 points on efficient shooting. And then for every night of that, there's a night where he's 4 for 15. There's nights where Kawhi won't play and he won't even register 20 shots. Like, he doesn't sometimes understand that he's as good as he is. And he so often settles for jumpers and just shoots himself out of games. He doesn't get to the rim nearly the same way. And he doesn't, sometimes he'll get by somebody, and instead of going into the contact, which I don't know if it's because he's afraid he won't get calls, because he does not get calls very often, not like Harden and Norman Powell do. And I don't know, it's because if he's been injured so much in his career, he's afraid to get hurt. But he'll sometimes get the step and then he'll snatch back to try to make a highlight, and the guy will recover. It's like, dude, you're just so much. When people say guys waste dribbles in today's game and kids waste too many dribbles, Paul George is a perfect ambassador for that. Wasting too many dribbles, doing too much. He literally, if he wanted to, could just catch the ball 15 feet away, turn and face and shoot. And when he does that, it's a thing of beauty. He doesn't even have to dribble the ball, but he so often doesn't. His basketball IQ for a star is, it's Russell. You know how people say Russell Westbrook's basketball IQ is low for a star? I think Paul George is even lower. I'm going to be honest with you. It's really, he has these bonehead live ball turnovers once or twice a game that are so appalling, dude. You guys would go nuts on him if he did that in Philly. Like, it would be crazy. And the worst part about it, bro, is he's just, confidence is very important, man, in sports. Like, he has such wavering confidence, and he makes so many excuses about things. For example, he and Kawhi have been wanting a point guard for so long. He goes in the media and asks first with Glenn Rivers. We can, I love this, that Philly fans and Clipper fans can agree that we hate Glenn Rivers, just sucks. But after the bubble, when Paul George had his all-time worst moment, he goes on All the Smoke and he says, I was being used like a JJ Redick or Ray Allen, and I didn't feel that way. But then the next year we get Ty Lue, and he puts the ball in Paul George's hands more as like a little bit more of a point forward, he and Kawhi. And he had that 2021 season that you referenced earlier, which was amazing. But then in 2023, he goes, I'm okay handling the ball, but I would like someone to have a point guard, someone to take the role off of me. It's like, okay, bro, like, what do you want? Like, I just don't get it. And then we get Westbrook, and then we get Harden. Like, and Paul George and Kawhi are signing off on all these moves. I don't believe that these are happening without their approval. And then now he talks about that on his podcast this year. He goes, we wanted James here. And now he's doing those shots and those subtle things that don't sound like you wanted him. It's like, he just makes a lot of excuses. So for better or worse, man, Paul George is an extremely talented player that leaves a lot on the table because his basketball IQ isn't high enough. He doesn't have enough dog in him. And but I'll tell you what, we've never seen him in a third option role. So with the Philadelphia 76ers in that third option role, it's fairly enticing to see what he could do.
Yeah, no.
And I love him still, by the way. I know it sounds like I hate him, but I actually do love the guy because of 2021. And as you know right now, Philly fans in your generation probably feel similar to how I do. That second round, dude, is so annoying. We can't get by it.
Yeah.
We've never gotten by it. So,
yeah. No, you froze up a little bit on my screen, but I can still hear you. And
I know I froze. I see if I'm frozen as well.
You're all good, but I'm just sitting back and like that whole, rant that you just went on. It just sounded so much like Sixer fans with Tobias Harris. Like, I can't even begin to tell you how parallel that was to the frustrations we have on the daily when it comes to Tobias Harris and the lack of confidence and turning the ball over and not having that go-to move. Like it was very beautiful, to be honest. But at the end of the day, man, I think it's going to be an intriguing free agency. He can go back to the Clippers, 4 years, $221, or he can go somewhere else, 4 years, $212. I don't know. I really don't know, but I think he's going to shake things up. Now we hear the reports Sixers may not be interested in him. It feels like every star this offseason is 34 or above. So we have some decisions to make, but at the end of the day, I think the Sixers and Clippers could have really big impacts in this free agency. And I appreciate you coming on and giving your insight about Paul George.
Oh, appreciate you, bro. Anytime.
And one last question, Dime Dropper. Is your burner account, was it dropping dimes, 510, 570? Is that you?
Nope, I'm not that guy, man, that tries to break news and stuff. That's not me.
Yeah, the no profile picture. I just had to give it a try, man. But nah, appreciate you tapping on. Be sure to follow him everywhere. And we will catch you on the next one, man. Peace.